Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today for this session to launch our summer game plan series. Today, we're hosting Summer Essentials, Strategies to Improve Student Engagement and Connectedness. I had a great time reading through your responses in the chat and learning about what made summer special. That's really going to set us up for our conversation today. I want to thank my PCY colleagues. Alea Rosario and Chris Valenzuela are in the chat supporting us and helping with logistics. So feel free to message any one of us directly for support throughout the session. And a quick intro to me. I'm Destiny L or Destiny Lopez. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the program manager with Partnership for Children and Youth or PCY. I see some messages are still going in the chat. So if you want to introduce yourself, feel free to still do that as we're moving through slides. Okay, to introduce our speakers, we're joined by some awesome people today. We're joined by Jessica Gunderson, the co-CEO of Partnership for Children and Youth, Ryan Carroll, coordinator of expanded learning programs with the Washington Unified School District, and Rina Serrano, coordinator of student and parent support programs with the Hayward Unified School District. They all waved hi. You'll see us with our bright blue backgrounds. You can spot us easily. Okay, so during today's session, we'll cover lots of information, and we want to make sure you can all engage with us throughout the session. So
You just left right now.
I'm going to pause for 1 second and make sure everyone is muted in the meeting. So take a look at your panel at the bottom. Just make sure there's a red line through your mute icon. So let's use the chat to share your thoughts and questions. This is going to be an opportunity to engage. We're going to have folks from our team taking a look at the chat and recording questions as they're coming in. So feel free to send anything. You can also use the reactions and raise your hand if you want to unmute and ask something. We'll have dedicated time for unmuting, asking direct questions to any one of our speakers. Moving on, I'm going to pass it to Alea, who's going to share a little bit about PCY and our approach to summer learning.
Great. Thanks, Destiny. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see so many friends and new friends join us for this series. So just want to say thank you again for joining us, as well as thank you for all the amazing work that you do every day on behalf of children, youth, and families. My name is Alea Rosario. Again, I'm the co-CEO here at Partnership for Children and Youth. And we're just so thrilled to see such a wide range of stakeholders and partners here today and engaging in summer, because working together across schools, across districts, and alongside community partners really is what we know what it takes to do summer learning at scale. And so before we jump into the content, it's important to start with, really getting clear on what we believe about the power of summer learning. So we've known for a really long time that summer is so important to the learning and development for children and youth, yet there has been really hugely unequal access to high quality summer programs, particularly for those students that have been most harmed by structural, economic, and racial inequities that have only been exacerbated during the pandemic, which you all have been witness to. And that unequal access contributes greatly to the learning and opportunity gaps that persist today. And so over the last 2 decades, PCY, along with partners and champions across the state, have come to understand that what works to get to the outcomes that we really want to see during the summertime is really that summer is not about remedial or punitive summer school programs. The research is clear that summer programs that are designed that look more like camp, with a mix of academics and enrichment, with lots of opportunities for choice, social emotional learning, and experiences that expand horizons, is what works. And so this series and the resources that we produced are all based on this research, and also based on the practical experiences of educators and leaders like the speakers who are joining us today, who are really innovating and leading in this space. So again, thank you for joining us. We hope that this series and the resources are helpful to you as you continue to plan for your 2024 summer learning programs. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Destiny.
Yeah, thanks, Alea. So if it's your first time coming to a summer game plan series, thanks for being here. If you're returning, thank you for being here. We're kicking off our 4th year of the summer game plan series, and today is our 21st session. Since spring 2021, so a couple years ago, the summer game plan series has engaged over 1,100 educators from nearly 800 unique organizations and 50 different field practitioners as speakers. For those of you that like numbers, I think it's really interesting to take a look at these. Last year, we turned 7 sessions into short 3, 5, and 10-minute videos to help elevate key practices and recommendations. We'll be sending a link to the page with these videos in the chat. And we're excited to continue to support you all in planning for your summer programs. Whether you're new or you're looking to improve your existing programs, we're going to share some new ideas and real-world examples today. We recognize that a summer program, especially the highest quality summer programs, take intentional planning. So this series will highlight a range of topics, and it will include some content delivery and also opportunities to dig into specific topics. You'll see here on the right side of the screen, we have our upcoming sessions in March and April. A lot of partnership. We have one focused on early learners, and then one on staff recruitment and professional development. These are hot topics in summer learning, so feel free to join our upcoming sessions. And moving on for our session today, our agenda includes starting with a summer learning presentation by Jessica. We'll then transition to a moderated panel with Rina and Rian. We've collected questions from you all during registration. We'll have an opportunity for you all to ask new questions as we have new information during our Q&A. And then we'll close with information about future sessions and what you can expect moving forward. At the end of our webinar today, we'll be able to understand the importance of summer learning and the unique elements of successful learning programs and describe strategies for implementing new or improving existing summer programs. And now I'll pass it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Destiny. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Gunderson, co-CEO of Partnership for Children and Youth. Really honored and excited to be here, as summer learning is one of my favorite topics and an area where I've been kind of conducting research and policy change over the last decade plus. So really excited to be here. My goal for the next 10 minutes or so is to provide a foundation on some of the research and policy context and what we've learned over the last 4 years with the summer game plan series, some highlights before really turning it over to the experts on summer. So we can move on. So before we jump into, a lot of folks on this call have heard me give the research on summer and some of the stuff Alea spoke about. But I want to zoom out a bit, because summer and expanded learning programs and the students and families that we serve aren't served in isolation, right? They are part of the full educational ecosystem where students are learning and developing every day, year round, all day. And as many of you know that have been working in these programs for a long time, they're most impactful when they're integrated with a child's larger and longer term learning goals and success. So summer programs are really a space that's flexible and adaptable to meet the moment, as it was illustrated by our role in re-engaging students and families who were returning from school closures during the pandemic. They were really responsive programs, right? And they continue to be. So, for most folks on this call, I think they know a key challenge facing schools and really top of mind are there large numbers of students missing a lot of school a lot more often. So what you can see in this slide is the fact that chronic absence, and for those that haven't heard that term, is if a student misses 10% or more of the expected attendance days, has more than doubled since 2018 and 19. And on top of that, those students that are often most underserved, African-American students, American Indian students, Pacific Islanders, are experiencing the highest rate of chronic absence. Additionally, schools are experiencing high percentages at the school level. So you also have double the number of schools that are experiencing something like 20 to 30% of their students that are chronically absent, which then impacts the whole school, not just the students and families missing school, right? But the teachers and administrators and the whole ecosystem. So I just wanted to bring that to bear because as we can move on to the next slide, a lot of things that our programs do really well strongly match with the underlying reasons for reduced engagement, attendance, and connectedness. So I'm not going to go into this slide. It's a great resource from the Policy Analysis for California Education. And why this is so important is you begin to see the reasons behind students' reduced attendance are also strengths for expanded learning and summer learning programs, right? So love and belonging, safety, meeting their esteem and their interests. So that's some of the context that we find ourselves in California right now. And I think most people here, again, on this call know, first and foremost, it's about students not being as connected to school and their families, but it's also about how schools get funded, right? The reason why attendance is impacting schools on top of that is the reduced ADA and then kind of the negative impacts that can spiral into. So wanted to bring that to bear. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. And as I mentioned, really, because of youth development pedagogy and how we design our programs, we're uniquely positioned to increase school connectedness and engagement. And high level here, the research is really clear, both in California specifically and nationally, that participation in our summer programs can increase school day attendance, levels of school connectedness, and sense of belonging, meaningful and participatory learning. A great thing right now is that our quality standards are strongly matched, again, with the underlying reasons why kids are missing school. So youth voice is really important. Choice is really important. Safety is really important. And the last thing I want to mention here on some of the research is that coherence really matters to student success. There is evidence in many places that the more coordinated and integrated after school and summer programs are with their school day partners, you can actually increase student outcomes through that integration. So it's not just because it sounds good, but it actually makes a difference in students' experiences. Thanks. And a big problem is too often in schools' efforts to address chronic absence and school connectedness, sometimes expanded learning programs and summer programs might be overlooked. So that's why we wanted to bring this to bear as we are all thinking about how we're coordinating and working across departments and divisions and looking at data. This is something that's unifying and brings us all together. So now that we've thought about how summer can support a child's year-round learning needs, I'm going to give a real high level on the research of summer. And I just wanted to say, for those that haven't heard from me before, it draws from all the literature and evidence on summer over the last 2 decades, as well as all the research that PCY has conducted specifically in California. And we've interviewed probably 100 to 150 stakeholders and more in dozens of districts across the state. So we know high quality summer learning programs can impact student outcomes. The thing is, there has to be certain conditions in place. And so those outcomes cannot be achieved unless research is pretty clear. You need regular attendance, right? So how do we design our program to support attendance? 2, there has to be a certain level of engagement within these programs to actually do it. The other thing is climate and culture. I'm still talking about the other slide, but it's all good because everyone can hear me. Yeah. Climate and culture really matter as well, right? There's clear evidence base from the RAND. And then also, when possible, RAND's research, and I strongly recommend anyone that hasn't gotten into this research to look at it because it's very focused on the ground and implementation, is that when teachers work in partnership with other youth development professionals, you can really move the needle on some academic outcomes. So those are some of the big highlights as we think about program design. And then moving on, let's get into, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. Everyone here knows a lot about it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it because it is the primary funding source for these programs by far. I highlighted a few things, worth highlighting as we think about summer program design. I want to also mention on timeline here. So summer 2022 was the first summer that we had Expanded Learning Opportunities Program fund. So we're now rolling into the 3rd summer with ELO-P funds. And so there's a lot more infrastructure. There's a lot more lessons learned that we can really build upon. So I want us to think about that. The other thing in back of all of our mind is that the audit for ELO-P started in July 2023. That was not in place last year per se. And that's always something that comes to play as we're designing our programs. And then lastly, I want to mention the fiscal cliff. So outside of California, particularly, the American Rescue Plan and ESSER $3 are set to expire in September 2024. And so I just think that's really important to know, particularly for high schools. For those here on this call that work in high school and middle school spaces, ELO-P dollars do not go there first, right? As everyone here probably knows. And so this is a factor in many districts, is kind of some of these, the reduction in all of our federal stimulus. Awesome. So this slide is just to showcase the fact that all school districts are coming to designing and building their summer learning programs from a different place. Prior to ELO-P, there were very, very limited dollars for summer. It was primary came in this form of supplemental, which you'll see on the right-hand side. Only 22% of school districts had that funds, right? So not many at all. More schools had ACES in 21st century, so kind of school day programs. And then everyone now has access to some level of ELO-P. And why I mention that is just when we've done research on these programs, it depends on where districts are starting or schools are starting to kind of where they are now, right? So not all school districts are equal in regards to both their funding levels and kind of the years of experience on the ground doing these programs. Great. So last in 2022, we tried to profile the range of districts. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but when we looked at how are people using these new ELO-P dollars, they kind of fit into these main buckets here. It was really about expanding existing summer programs, right? Serving double, triple, quadruple the number of kids, increasing program access. There was a lot of reduction in fees in certain districts we looked at. Also, in many cases, again, there wasn't a permanent funding stream for summer. So sometimes ELO-P came in and replaced old funding streams. And then in many cases, we were excited to see two things. One, totally new programs. People started from ground zero. Or two, move from a half day to a full day program, which we all know is really important to meet the needs of families and students. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but what we saw in ELO-P is basically increased access through serving more kids. More students had access because they didn't have as many financial barriers, and then full day programs, which is what families need. The next piece is quality. And deepening quality is really where our speakers, I know, are going to dig in. And this takes some of the heavier lifting. And so I'm just going to, we'll pass through that one and hear from our, and the main things to know when it comes to quality, and I think we'll hear from our speakers, like I said, is really on how are you deepening enrichment, bringing more different types of enrichment than we've ever seen before in the history of California. And also compensating our staff and having a lot more staff, which is essential to the quality of these programs. Great. And so I'm almost through here. And so I want to close how I started with how to develop and leverage these programs to increase student connectedness and engagement. So on the right-hand side, you'll see kind of a multi-tiered approach, which you guys have probably seen in a lot of other presentations. So this comes from Attendance Works. Strongly recommend going there if you're really interested in this issue of school day attendance and strategies. But, expanded learning is often used as like a tier 1 or a tier 2 support. And so there's a lot of different ways we can leverage our summer programs to meet different needs of different student groups. The actions you'll see on the left-hand side, which I'll highlight a few of them, actually come from summer 2021, which was the first time back for many students. And at that time, we saw a lot more innovation and a lot more connection or focus on student connections and student re-engagement. And what we'll say is we've seen maybe the pendulum swing and veer away from some of that. So I would just say for some of these issues around engagement and connection, we might want to think about what did we do when we were bringing students and families and staff back on campus that really made a huge difference. And so some actions that we've thought about and actually learned from school districts are, one is how are we conducting targeted outreach to families? How are we, in the pandemic, we were often really doing a lot of outreach to the families that had been most disconnected in school. How are we continuing to make sure that we're prioritizing those students? Also integration, right? Integrating both from planning to design to day-to-day operations with a kind of a wide range of staff is really important. And then the two other things that I think are worth mentioning are summer bridge programs. The folks that are, the student groups that are missing the most school right now are early learners and high school students. That might not surprise someone on the phone calls. And those are often where we see the most summer bridge programs. So it's just something to think about. We can go into the research and kind of model on summer bridge programs. And the last thing is participation. Another thing we've seen really successful in programs is choice. Parents getting to choose, students getting to choose, and often staff getting to choose what they want to teach, how they teach it, and when they teach it, so we can maximize the number of staff we have on campus. So with that, I will hand it over to Destiny, and I'm excited about the panel.
Thanks, Jessica. It's really helpful to have that overview and foundation for summer learning. We're going to transition over to our panel, and we'll hear from Rian and Rina about their experience and approach to summer learning. They'll provide some concrete examples of strategies, partnerships, and tools that they've leveraged for a successful summer learning program. So to start off, Rian and Rina, we'll start off with Rian. Could you tell us about your role and your district as a whole? Have you used ACES before, 21st century funding? How many students do you serve?
Great. So thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Ryan Carroll. I'm the coordinator of expanded learning for Washington Unified School District. I actually come into a very unique role and perspective on expanded learning program. I spent the first 15 years of my career in a nonprofit. So I was always the person reporting to a school district. And then within the last year and a half, I became the coordinator in a school district. So I've been able to sit on the other side of the table, which now makes me appreciate my district colleagues a lot more because I realized I probably gave them more headaches than they needed. But it's all in good fun, but it's definitely been a lot of fun. And so here in Washington Unified in West Sacramento, we're a relatively smallish district. We serve 7,700 students in the entire district. We have 7 TK through 8th grade school sites, 3 high schools, and 1 adult education center. In our programs, we operate at all 7 of our elementary sites, and I just did the numbers right now. We're currently serving roughly 1,000 students across the 7 sites, ranging anywhere from sites that's averaging 84 kids a day to sites that are averaging up to about 250 kids a day. And then 3 of our sites are doing full day programming from 7 to 6. The other ones are doing programming, half day programming, but we're partnering with our TK and preschool programs to kind of fill in those gaps for the program needed for the little ones to go on. So that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of our school district in Washington Unified. And I don't know if I missed, I got all the questions. I think I got it. I think I hit everything, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, thanks for covering that, Ryan. As a reminder, if folks have specific questions, add them to the chat and we can have follow-ups. We're going to cover a lot of different topics during our panel. So don't worry about covering it all with this first one. Okay. Rina, can you share a little bit about your role in your district?
Yeah, so I am the coordinator of the student parent support programs, which encompasses before and after school programs. Sorry, excuse me for a moment. My apologies, have a little bit of a cough there.
Well, we can come back to you, Rina. Ryan, if you can share a little bit more about your summer programs specifically and what grades participate in those. And unmute, please.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been on Zoom, so I totally brought the mute button.
No problem.
So last year for Washington Unified School District, it was their first year doing a summer program. So right now the district only received, well, on top of ELO-P, they were only receiving ACES funding, but didn't have any supplemental funding. So with last year's ELO-P funding, it allowed us to start doing those 30 non-school day programming days. So I came in with like 15 years of experience. I've been doing summer programming since 2011, starting with Sac City when they launched their first official summer programming, and then also doing summer program with Elk Grove Unified when I was overseeing programs there. So I came in with a lot of experience, knowing what it looked like. And so when we had this opportunity at Washington Unified, that really helped us because there weren't a lot of the people in the district didn't have the experience of how to operate it, how to run it, what did it look like. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of easy. I mean, it really wasn't, but for me, it was a little, it wasn't as big of a lift as it was starting from ground zero with no experience. So I kind of came in, took the lead, worked with our providers, and instead of running it at all 7 of our school sites, we took the models that were used in other districts and selected 4 sites specifically located within the city of West Sacramento to be community sites. So basically any student within the district could apply to go to any school site. So if you're in Northwest Sacramento, but you have family that lives in the South part, you can apply to go down there if they need to pick you up or whatnot. So we really opened it up to, again, giving the choice for parents and families to choose where they wanted to go based on locations, based on accessibility for programming. And so once we established those parameters, we then, started looking for our providers, working with our partners and seeing like, okay, so here's the day, what's going to look like. Again, communicating with transportation because, ELO-P has to do transportation for the students. So making sure we're doing transportation for the kids, getting in contact with nutrition services, getting in contact with maintenance and facilities, because like I said in the past, they would do all their major construction projects over the summer and we're like, hi, we're here. So it took a lot of adjusting and adaptability and flexibility for all those other departments to kind of work with us to provide service to our families. And we will say like our first summer, we averaged probably serving about 600 kids across the 4 school sites in that first summer. Some sites were closer to about 100 kids a day. Some were closer to about 150, 160 a day. Again, not bad for a first summer where families didn't really know what was going on. So I think even with, doing that, and like I said, we reached out to 14 outside supplemental providers to come in and provide other pieces of enrichment for the students as well. And so we're taking that momentum and, applying that momentum and applying our lessons, our bumps and bruises from last year and applying to this year to help it be a lot smoother, because we also partnered with other departments that are running their academic portion of summer school to make sure that those kids also have access. So it was a huge learning curve, but we got through it. And I think it's just going to make the programming in West Sacramento stronger for the families, in terms for academics and the enrichment portion.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. And I love that you're connecting it back to this idea of having a choice for families and students. And Rina, can you share a little bit, please?
Yeah. So again, sorry, my apologies. So I'm with Hayward Unified School District. As I stated, I am a coordinator of student parent support programs, which is under the student services. So we are the ones that implement the expanded learning programs. I've actually been with expanded learning for 17 years since Prop 49 here in California. So I started off my after school experience with Merced County Office of Ed, and then transferred over to Hayward. In Hayward, our after school program, we're fortunate. We've been able to serve, before ELO-P funds, we were serving kinder through 12th grade. And then starting 2 years ago, we started serving TK students, which isn't at every single school. I do want to let you know that this year has been amazing for us, implementing a lot of different strategies. Last year, we're serving an average of 9,000 students across, the TK-12. And in our summer programs, we kind of average about 526, give or take, because prior to ELO-P, we were implementing already a summer program where we allowed all of our students to participate. So depending on, the facilities that were available, we would open it up to students, from the district to be able to participate. Our funding we do have ACES and 21st funding. And then with ELO-P, we have that as well. So we've been able to enhance our programs, and we've been able to bring in a lot of different partners to provide different services for the students. And I think that's what's helped us increase our numbers for this school year.
Absolutely. Highlighting the role of partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to our next question, what were your goals for summer and how did you leverage new funding? What was different from how you approached summer in the past? We can start with you, Rina.
Sure. So I feel that prior to ELO-P, it was limited in the sense of, to the funding that we were receiving. And at the time, we do have some ACES funding for summer as well as 21st Century. So I think what was happening, because it was limited to the school sites, then it was limited to the number of students that we can serve. What I can tell you is that we've been working with the Wallace Foundation and DSLN to really bring in our district as a whole so that we're not working in silos, right? Like expanded learning isn't just doing their own thing, migrant ed is doing their own thing, special ed is doing their own thing. So I want to say since 2022, which is going to be 2 years now, we've been really working hard together as a district to try to serve different students with different needs so that we can then be able to serve more students, but then we're also not competing, right, for the same students to participate in programming. So what we've been doing is blending our funding. And what I mean by that is either with general funds or with specific grant monies that a department has. So I'll give you an example. We're super excited to be on our second year working with special ed, where we're not just serving students that have an IEP that have to participate in what's called extended school year, right? ESY. So what ends up happening is some students that have an IEP or a 504 then don't get served. And so what we're doing is that we're making sure that we have spots available to serve those students, but then looking at their needs, and then we're sharing staff. So the special ed might run a program that's only 4 hours, let's say, and then we are able to utilize the paraeducators that have expertise that our staff may not have, so that students can participate in an enrichment program. You know, so that's definitely a goal of ours to continue. We're also working with our ed services department to make sure that we are trying to look at the academics and what can we do together. And again, making it not just rigor and academics. I feel like summer has to be fun, project-based learning, so that they really want to stay all day, right? And so we kind of do a combination of having teachers, partners, and then our expanded learning staff to then give the students choice, and then parents choice, because we let them know what kind of programming we're having prior to them signing up, so that we can really give opportunities for the students to participate in different things.
Yeah, thanks, Rina. Before we transition to Ryan, I'm curious if you have any advice for messaging and outreach strategies to get students interested and participating regularly.
So our best marketing has been the students, to be honest, because especially like the middle school, I know the middle school, they struggled a lot, and they do have almost anywhere from 150 to 200 students participating. I know that might not sound large, but for us, it's awesome. When we had only like 50 kids showing, it's not required. And so really a word of mouth. But then what we've learned is that you have to also market in advance. So like, don't wait a month before summer. So my advice is be clear in your like message to families, use pop-up words that are going to be attractive to the students, and really identify, like, don't just say field trips. What kind of field trips are you going to go if that's something you're doing? If you're doing enrichment activities, don't just say enrichment. Actually try to specify the partners that you're using, because that's what helped us increase our numbers. I know our summer numbers average about 520 to 550, but it used to average 250 total, so I know that it's doubled, and that's what we're doing. We're just making sure that we're utilizing words that the kids are interested, but then the kids are experiences. It's not just like the regular school day. So I feel like that's what's helped us get more students to participate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rina. Now, Ryan, can you share a little bit about your goals for summer, how you've approached it differently, and any advice you might have?
Yeah, so kind of like what I said in the last response, last year was the first year the school district did a summer program, but historically, the City of West Sacramento Parks and Rec Department did their own kids camps around the neighborhoods, around the school sites from like 10 to 2. They were free based on their own tax measures that they passed. And then some of them were fee-based because they were specialty ones, like they did like a sports camp, or they did them at the community center. So they had a range of options that were going on. So last year with the ELO-P funding, we filled in the gaps that they weren't serving per se. And so they still ran their summer camps from 10 to 2 for families that didn't need the full day. And we ran our programs from the 7:30 to 5 portion of it. And so again, like I'll be honest, our goal last year was to just get the program started. We were very ambitious. So our goal was just like to get it running and pray it goes well and that, kids show up and, that was it. We had an internal goal of like 600 applications. We've received about 1,100. So like, yeah, I know a lot of numbers. We had one school site that actually had 400 applications that we've enrolled those 400 kids, but because of the attendance not being a requirement, we averaged between 150, 175 at those sites because the parents were able to be like, that organization, which was fee-based childcare previously, they already have a system in place. So they would check with the families the week before saying like, hey, let us know if you're not going to be here. So they were able to staff that appropriately. So they were staffing things fine. So that kind of worked out in our favor. So we took some lessons from that. Sorry, I got off tangent, but so that's kind of where that was going. But again, some of our goals, talking like what Rina was saying, is historically, though, the district has also ran academic portions for English language learners. We have a dual immersion programs that kids are enrolled to. We have the ESY programs. They also have Native American education programs for the students in the district, and they are ran for 4 hours a day for like 3 or 4 weeks. So our goal last year was to extend those services to all those students, so they wouldn't miss out on the programs. So they would go to their program from 8 to 12, and then at lunch they would transition to us for the rest of the day. And then when their program ended in the daytime, they would transition to us the following day in the morning to be with us from the entire time. So that was one of our goals, was working with that department to offer the program to get it going. And I think for this year, our goal is to be more intentional about how we're offering, making sure that things are a little more streamlined. We did have some confusion because, again, it was the first time that the departments had to work together. So families that said they were interested in wanting to do the extended learning program for summer said yes, but never filled out an application. So we're really trying to fill in those gaps with like, okay, what gaps were there last year? How can we fill them in and make it more streamlined? So again, our goal is just to make it a lot smoother and more seamless. So that way it becomes easier for the adults to run it, so we know like, okay, Johnny's going here, but Bobby's going home. So really working on those goals to do. And talking like what Rina said about marketing, because with ELO-P, there isn't that attendance requirement. We did market, we send out like a 1-pager for each site, like here's what's offering at these times for each grade level. We did talk about a field trip. I mean, granted, we didn't know specifics at the time, we just said field trip, but that actually got people excited for, because sometimes even the school days, kids don't go on field trips. So the fact that we offered a field trip, especially to our 7th and 8th grade students, because we were again trying to attract those middle school kids, because all of our sites are K-8, so there's not a traditional middle school. So middle school we noticed was a big gap in our district. So we're trying to attract those students into the program by doing that marketing piece. And and parents would be like, oh, do we have to be there every day from like 7:30 to 5? And I'll be honest, we'll get into this later, but we ran a 10-week program. One of our goals is to not run 10 weeks again, just because there's a question in there about cleaning, which we can touch base in a second. But, as parents are asking those questions like, oh, do we have to be there for the full 9 hours? Do we have to be there for the full 10 weeks? We'll be like, no, the grant says that, it is at parents' convenience, but, just let us know when you're not going to be there so we can plan accordingly. So I think once we also let the families know that there was some flexibility, it kind of eased some of their unknowns, because again, this was the unknown for the families as well. And so, we got a lot of it kind of worked out where like family A wouldn't show up for week 1, but family B showed up for week 1, but then family B didn't show up for week 2. So they kind of like alternated times to keep the consistency of the programming. So as long as you advertise the right way, again, with what you're providing, what the enrichments you're doing, we did do a little bit of an academic intervention as well, working with Scholastic and working with daytime teachers to do that, really helped bring in those kids, because those teachers knew the students and were able to be like, hey, I'm going to be there, you should come work to the program. So using even the regular staff as intervention specialists kind of helped us out to really market us for our first year. And so we're hoping again this year to maintain that momentum and then just make it a little less bumpy and more seamless for us to move forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. I'd like to thank the audience for sending questions in the chat as well. We are recording these questions to prioritize them during the Q&A portion, so keep sending them. If you want to send an anonymous question, you can send a direct message to Alea. We'll also record those. And moving on, I know you shared a little bit about this already, Ryan, and I'm wondering what you can both share further. ELO-P requires a 9-hour day for summer and intersession programs. How are you meeting that 9-hour requirement? Share about your schedule and what a full day looks like.
I can take that if you want. So prior to ELO-P, we were required to do, like I said, we had 21st Century and ACES. So 21st Century comes with an AM program. So we already had a requirement to do an hour and a half. And then what you could do is you can also request with CDE to do a 6-hour program. So we were already doing a program from 7 in the morning until probably 3 o'clock. So with ELO-P, what we did was we just extended it to encompass the 9 hours. And then again, what we are doing then is expanding. So with us working with ed services and special ed, a lot of times what ends up happening is that we don't have to utilize our staff for the whole day, because the teachers are working with students, right? And we're blending our funding. So they're paying for a portion, we're paying for a portion. So then the students are either with teachers or they're doing a specialized program, or whether it's an academics. And then at certain points, then our staff come into prep, and then they're doing the afternoon with the students all the way until the time that the parents pick them up. We do run a program until 4:30. So then that way, we have that coverage. Prior to ELO-P, we were just doing, 5.5 hours, a group of staff, and another 5.5, because we had basically almost a 10-hour program that we were running. So we've actually modified that. And then we've brought in partners so that even though we're building the curriculum and the enrichment components, then our partners come in during the time of enrichment, and then we're able to do a rotation schedule. And a lot of times our partners are coming in 2 days a week. We're running a program ourselves 2 days a week, right? So it's a lift on our staff, and then we do field trips for 1 whole day. So then again, even though they're participating, and they're having to supervise the students, that is helping our program. And that's kind of how we've done it the last 2 years.
Awesome. Thanks, Rina. Ryan, would you like to add anything about the 9-hour day?
Yeah, so 9 hours, I'll be honest, it sounds like a long time to be with kids, but once you start going, you realize that like, oh, okay, we're doing our first recess break, so that's 2 hours gone. Then you're like going to an activity, and it's like, oh, it's lunch, and then you go to like another activity, then it's like the afternoon recess break, and then you're like, oh, the kids are leaving. So 9 hours seems like a long time, and when I tell people that summer was one of my favorite times to do programming, because it's a longer day, and for those of us who are usually doing after school time, like we don't usually get out of bed until noon. It was difficult to be up at 7 in the morning, but those originally before ELO-P, those 6 to 7 hours flew by because there was just a lot of activity being planned. So the 9 hours seems like a lot of time to fill in, but it really doesn't. So kind of like what Rina was saying, we reached out with supplemental providers. I just put in the chat a link to one of the school sites of what we did for enrichment providers. So if you want to click on that, it was just an idea of how we filled out the day. So we had enrichment providers come in. They would work with certain grade levels. So like every grade level had a certain activity. So like the younger ones focused on like music and dance. The older ones focused on theater. There was art. We had martial arts. We had tennis and golf lessons for all the kids. We did SEL components with 2 different providers based on grade level. And then anytime that, a grade level didn't have an assigned enrichment, then the staff were responsible for those activities for the day. So since we worked with the community-based organizations, they had staff there for the entire day. They usually did like a split shift, and so they would have a staff member there in the morning, staff member there in the afternoon, and they would plan the activities for those kids to fill in the gaps that they weren't doing theater, they weren't doing music, they weren't doing dance. So that example, like it broke down everything week by week, what it was to do, and especially for the CBOs, since it was their first time running a big program like that, it helped them out a lot because they were also worried about how they were going to fill a 9-hour day in, but they realized like it was broken up pretty well. And so their responsibility as a CBO was, if your class is assigned for theater, me as the after school instructor would still go with that classroom to help with more like the class behavior management. So that way, if there was like a major disruption, I could then take the students out to the program leader for a break. So that way the other students can still get the lessons learning from that theater degree. So we still worked in partnership. They still worked with their kids, but they didn't have to plan for that hour that was there. And so that 9-hour day really kind of like that schedule and those providers really help break up that 9-hour day for the staff. And again, it's and kind of like what we talked about with the messaging, once we started doing these activities, the kids started talking about like, oh my God, I got to do theater today. I got to do dance. I think one of the best moments I remember having was I happened to be at the end of a program for one day, and it's like a little kindergarten kid got mad at her dad. He's like, why are you here so early? And dad's like, it's 5:30. Like, it's time to go. They all want to go home. Like, well, I don't want to go home. They're like, well, we love you, but we want to go home and you can come back tomorrow. And granted, she was there since the beginning at 7 and was complaining about leaving at 5:30. So the fact that you have the kinders and the little ones voicing that what they like about it, it really speaks volumes to what was going on in the program. And that's like that's your biggest part of marketing, is getting the kids in, because I think there's a saying like kids vote with their feet. If they don't like it, they're just not going to show up, and if they like it, they're going to stay. So that helped us a lot in our marketing, and really keeping those kids there for a majority of like those 9 hours. Like, we had probably like 70% of the kids stay more than, I would say, 6 to 7 hours at a day. So that was, again, a huge for us, considering it was a first time program for us last summer. So yeah.
Thank you both for sharing. Yeah, that's exciting. For our next question, what have your community members, such as teachers, school administrators, and families, named as impact and benefits from summer learning? And we can start with you, Rina.
So I feel like for us, the impact has been like the shift in our programming type, and that we are doing more to serve the students, kind of that summer learning loss, like embedding that into our program. I think the parents appreciate that, but that we're also doing like STEAM activities, right? That we're doing a variety, so that, and the parents get to see that when they take the items home. The teachers, of course, because we're including them now as part of our expanded learning summer programs. I think, we started small, but soon, we're hopeful to add more. And then the school administrators, because we're being intentional about our programming, our communication, they're understanding more like what we're doing. A lot of times when you think of summer, especially when an expanded learning department or like we're called the youth enrichment program is doing something, they're like, oh, that's babysitting childcare. But now they're understanding that we're doing way more than that. And so I think the impact is really understanding the program, but that we're also being intentional with the students that are participating. Something I didn't share earlier is that we make sure that we have a program in different areas of our city so that children can participate. And then the regular school day was doing a morning academics program, but in the past they had not been able to participate in enrichment in the afternoon, like a full day program. And so we bus students from these different, so whether you were participating in migrant ed, a literacy program, or an academic program with a regular school day, now the parents had an option to say, yes, I want them to participate in the after school component, or a full day program is what we called it. And then we bus students over to the specific schools that were already running programming. And so I think the impact and the benefit is that we're really being intentional about the services that we're providing the students, but that we're also being intentional about our communication so that others in the community knows what we're actually doing, which is something we probably didn't do well in the past.
Awesome. Thank you. Brian, can you share again? The question is, what have your community members, such as teachers, school administrators, and families, named as impact and benefits from summer learning?
The families, for sure, we've heard a lot is that it helped alleviate a lot of their childcare costs. Oftentimes, again, since this was the first time the district offers summer programs, so 3 out of the 4 summer sites that we operated were normally fee-based programming. So it was like private licensed childcare. So last year's summer was when we officially took them under our expanded learning wing, and we removed the fees for families, which was great because normally 2 sites were ran by the same organization, and they collapsed down to 1 school site because they were only serving 40 kids between 2 school sites. And then since we took the fees away, we kept both sites open, and they were averaging about 120 kids daily. So those families were able to have a safe and supportive environment where those kids were going to get supervised, they're going to get fed, they're going to have enrichment opportunities going on. So that was one impact that came on from those families, that they were very appreciative because they didn't have to worry about finding space for the kids while they were, trying to work, trying to go to school, trying to do things that guardians do to sustain their households. And then, we also benefited from having our school board members also enroll their kids into the program. So we would hear them talk about the programs during the board meetings and how it was impactful for them. And so they really up and talked about the programming, during the board meetings. And then even with the school administrators, kind of like Rina was saying, in the past, there was always that perception that after school and before school was like glorified babysitting. A lot of the administrators were working on campus over the summer, and they saw what was happening on the campus, and they saw the intervention that was going on. They saw the impact that the sites, the CBO staff were doing, and it really made them take a step back and look through a different lens of how we are operating, and that, really helping them to take the pushing us forward as being recognized as educators. Because I've always say we're educators in a non-traditional sense. Because, yes, we do get to have all the fun stuff, but there is that disguised learning behind it where kids get to, the kids may look like they're, doing theater, but they're doing like language comprehension. They're able to like memorize, they're getting how to enunciate. So there's all these things that are going in that the kids aren't knowing about it because we've disguised it as fun. And so the administrators, when I checked in with them after summer and just actually a few weeks ago, they realized that we are part of the education umbrella, and that they're going to help work. They're helping to bridge the gap between the regular school day and the expanded learning program. So we're no longer kind of separated to where we're not like that program in the back. So now it's just, they're working to have us all come together to be that community to support all the students at the elementary schools. Because yes, even though the bell rings, those aren't after school kids, they're still the kids of that elementary school. And I think we've now, the administrators and the teachers are now seeing that connection, that it is still, we are one, we're not separate programming. So the programs that it's helping to really bridge things closer instead of building up walls. And I think it's, I've seen that just in the last year. I've seen a lot more support from teachers who are actually, with the increase in size, a lot more teachers are now willing to share their rooms, because as we all know, teachers aren't the fans of sharing classrooms and after school space. And so we've actually had teachers volunteer because they see the impact that we're having on the students at their school site.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to ask, you guys talked about marketing, but I was wondering if you could both talk about, now that you're working in more coordination with a range of school districts, kind of how you target different student groups, like unduplicated student groups, and kind of what resources there might be for outreach, or even if there's kind of like data or coordination with teachers on kind of recruiting students and families. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more about kind of this different populations you target and how you do that recruitment and coordination with others.
So I can go first.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing is, when we became aware of ELO-P and kind of serving, our UPP students. And we started the collaboration with the regular school day, for example. And I asked questions like, how do you get students to participate in your academic programs, right? How do you get, because there's things like special ed is a specific group of students that they have to serve. Migrant ed has a specific group of students that have to serve. But let's say that they would open it up to more students, then that's where I could take advantage of like our UPP like list. And so what I started doing is making sure that they're recruiting those students first. So like when they're looking at the academic component, like they do a TK to second grade literacy, right? Then I'm wanting them to make sure that they're offering it to UPP students first. And then also not just here in Hayward, when we're provided a school to do a summer program or a school to do an academic program, you know, the principal knows that that's what we're going to do. So we didn't want it just to be the students at that school. We wanted to open it up to everybody and then find, you know, we ask the questions, do you need transportation? Can you get to the school? Like we do almost like a survey, but we're being intentional about how we are seeking those specific students. And then we have multiple sites so that it's not just the UPP students being served, but also the students right in the district that also may need it, just because we have the ACES and 21st funding as well. And so we do different avenues. We have something that's called Peach Jar. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but that's where you upload all your flyers. We do Blackboard. So we use the school systems, you know, all call kind of to parents. So they'll get a message, a text, and they'll get emails. We also have our own enrollment system for YEP, right, for our youth enrichment program. So what we do is that we have a way to do a massive also email out to families. And because we constantly do newsletters and things, we kind of have them update that information. So I know that's how we do marketing. And then what we do when we're like closer, and let's say we haven't had this problem where we don't have enough students, but let's say we did in the past when we were struggling, we would do like 3 weeks before the program, we would call like what we would have our street employees, like we have flyers and we're going to different places right in the community and we're dropping it off where we know if there's like an event on Thursdays on Main Street, then we would have a table and have information there. So like we kind of did all those avenues to market, and I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah. I mean, I just think building this awareness among families and parents, and then ensuring like access only means so much if people know and are aware. So Ryan, we'll start jumping into the Q&A, but if you had anything to add just kind of on how you might coordinate with other aspects of the district, teachers or principals, kind of in the actual recruitment and identification of students and engaging those students and families.
Yeah, so similar to like Rina, we have like our director of communications for the district will do the email blast. We're like, hey, applications are available, check the website. I like to tend I over communicate. So literally families get an email from me like every week, like, hey, applications are available. They're like, yeah, we know. But I send it out because, you know, I'd rather have over communication than no communication. And then to further work with students, and especially we have different coordinators and directors. So so we work with our FIT coordinator, who's our families in transition. So those are the ones that are foster youth or homeless youth, you know, who are having housing transition. So we'll work with her when they're like students are applying. And, you know, we go through the priority list of like, okay, so this FIT family apply, let's see where we can get them. We also work directly with the bilingual education director, and we work with our special ed director. So, you know, because again, we never deny applications to anyone. Everyone can apply is what we say. But if parents is like, hey, my kid's in SPED, what can we do? What we do is we work with the SPED coordinator, see like, what can we do? What are accommodations? And then, you know, we, you know, work with the SPED coordinator and the parent to really work and, you know, discuss the needs of the students and then work with them in the program when they get there. And same idea with the FIT families, because they are our most vulnerable. We definitely work the hardest to get them into the program. Even if we have a wait list or a full classroom, we tend to squeeze them in because we know that they would need to be in the program more. So we work at the different departments based on the needs. So like, you know, and then we also have a newcomer classroom. So like students who are new to the country or new to education, if they apply for the program, we also work with them to get them so we understand the socialization of working with students helps them build their social skills, their language skills. You know, it really makes them feel more at ease, especially if they come from a country where, or they come from a place where they had no formal education. So we work with other departments who will identify, and even the admin and teachers, if they say like, hey, I think the student would benefit from this because they're having attendance issues, we've worked to get those kids in because it's an incentive for the kid to come to school because they get to do all this stuff in after school as well. So we work with pretty much every department to highlight and designate kids who would need the support more.
That's great. Before I pass out to Destiny, speaking of working with other departments, we got a great question on facilities, which is always an issue, whether we're talking about classrooms or sites. So there was a question from the audience around how do you get your district to work around the program using campuses during breaks? So we're thinking about cleaning, construction, maybe just any advice or suggestions that's worked well when you're kind of working with facilities around kind of those varying schedules and needs, right? There's a need for cleaning during the summer and some other kind of construction. So anything either one of you can jump in and love to hear from both because facilities come up in every webinar.
Yeah, so we have my partner at work, Maya Hernandez and myself, because she does secondary, I do elementary. We actually start early on. So we meet around November with our facilities and maintenance director to kind of get an idea of what schools are going to be available, like I said, because we always want to make sure we have schools, you know, in the south side, north side, or close to the freeway, that kind of stuff. So we kind of talk about that in advance so that we can kind of get an idea of the schools that are going to be available. And then normally he has a list of work that's going to be done by February. So like we get an idea of schools. So we have a list because we talk to the principals of those schools to coordinate, like, can we use your facilities, blah, blah, blah. And then the custodians. And then what we do is we've done what Rian has done in the past, where we've actually gone all the way to maybe a week or two before school starts, but then that doesn't give enough time for the turnaround. And so what we started doing was ending at either the last week of July or even before that to give an opportunity. And then what we do is that we work with our facilities and maintenance department to get that school site a third person so that they can help with the deep cleaning. A lot of times too, depending this last year we had a big program, so we had to use the whole school. But like, let's say if it's a school that has less students, then we tell them, okay, what side should we use? And we kind of stick to that side so that helps. If they are doing any maintenance or anything like that, that won't harm the students, then we work with the contractor they have or whatever to kind of do, you know, be on one side of the school and then use the other side once they're done. So but because we're doing that communication, even before ELO-P, we were already doing that. It's already like a custom that we're going to meet. We're going to know what schools we can use. And then kind of, you know, it's at a larger scale, we have more, and then it kind of trickles down to these are the schools that you can use. So it's about communication, meeting in a timely manner, and knowing already kind of what, and then the weather, right? I don't know for Rian, but for ourselves, we don't have AC in some of our older schools, right? And so we try to stay away from those schools in the summer. And so just having that good relationship with those administrators and then giving that support with like a third person to help with the cleaning has given us the opportunity to use those facilities.
Well, first of all, I hope Rian has AC and SAC. And yeah, I would love to hear any advice you have on sometimes working with facilities and all those workarounds. Rina, those were some great, really practical pieces, especially like the timeline for planning.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Rina. A lot of that. So since last year was the first year, we got a jump start on the planning process. We worked with our MOT facilities, so they gave us a map. So we highlighted which rooms we were going to use ahead of time. So we knew the rooms we were going to use even in January. So they were able to work around that. And then once, and again, last year we decided to go big or go home. So school ended for us on a Wednesday. We started the following Monday. And then we stopped the program the Friday before school began. So there was really just 4 days the entire summer kids did not have program. I don't recommend it. And I only say that from working with the facility standpoint because, you know, especially some of our bigger programs, we reserve like half the school. But as we got through summer, we realized we weren't using those. So what we did with facilities, like, hey, what we did with our CBOs was like, hey, what rooms are you using and which ones are you not using? So that way, the ones that they weren't using, we let facilities know so they can start doing the deep cleaning on the school site. And then once they got them done, then we transitioned kids from the non-deep clean classrooms to the deep clean classrooms for like the last couple of weeks. So that way we ensured that every classroom got deep clean. We did make some exceptions for the rooms that are, we're fortunate enough to have some dedicated classrooms at the school site. So we were like, you know what, don't deep clean our room. It's fine. We'll deal with this later. But we wanted to ensure that the regular daytime classrooms were deep clean because, it was the first time the rooms got used. So we did a lot of shifting, like Rina was saying, like, once they did this section, then we moved to the other section to ensure that everything got cleaned off. And this year, what we did, in order to like not have that as such a headache, we actually are reducing down from like 10 weeks down to 7 weeks. So we'll end like 3 weeks before school begins to allow that final deep clean. And, again, working with like, if we reserved 15 rooms, but we're only using like 8 of them, we'll release those other 7 to facilities to do the deep cleaning process. So they're not trying to rush them all the last 3 weeks of time. So again, it's all about communication, planning. And again, as we all know with education and expanded learning in particular, it's all about being flexible and adaptable to the situation because, not every day is going to be the same.
I wanted to add a component to that, the facilities. I'm not sure if others are struggling, but we struggle for space during the regular school year as well. And so what we implemented was a classroom agreement document. So like before we enter a room with a teacher, we just kind of talk about like what areas can we use, what areas can't use for expanded learning. And then that way everybody kind of knows because we rotate through. Sometimes it's a 2 months, sometimes it's a month, whatever they decide to give us the space. And that's helped us a lot because then it's like, formalized, it's done with our coordinators at the school sites. And so that's helped us to gain access to rooms.
Awesome. Thanks, Rina and Ryan. Destiny L here, folks. My internet cut out for a second, but I'm back. And we're going to move on to another question from the chat. This question is, what kind of field trips have been successful with your summer and after school programs? When partnering with Parks and Rec or other cultural institutions, what has been successful and or challenging? And I'm posing this question to Rina, Ryan, and Jessica. So feel free to share, any one of you.
We do field trips that are close to the Bay Area. So we've always done field trips for our summer program, but we were only doing one. We used to do sessions for summer. So like we used to do session 1 because we have year-round schools as well. So we used to do like a session 1, a session 2, and a session 3. Like Ryan, we would go all the way up close to a week before school started. So we would do like one field trip a session. This last year, what we did was weekly because we are running now a 6-week program. And we went to like the San Francisco Zoo, the San Jose Tech Museum. We try to bring, we have the luxury of having like Google or just different companies close by. And so what we do is, depending on our partners and what we're doing, then we'll include a field trip. In the summer, it's easier. We do it one day in the week so we can go and come back. We're fortunate to have like a theater closed and then just have it for our students. So we did that field trip as well. During the school year, unfortunately, we do not have an opportunity to do field trips because we wouldn't be back by 6 o'clock with traffic. So we take advantage of the summer to do different field trips in the Bay Area that we can take the kids. We have been working with our Hayward area recreational department because there are parks and different trails and just different things that we can experience that students might not have known about. And so that is something that we have already in the works, discussing with them to see if we could do like some day trips with the students. And I know Maya Hernandez, my colleague, is trying to do like an overnight with the middle school students, like camping or something like that.
Sounds exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan and Jessica, anything y'all would like to add?
Yeah, so like I said, last year, one way that we started attracting students is especially with our middle school kids, we did a all-day field trip to San Francisco. So we took kids from 7 in the morning. We had worked with the museum on the pier. I keep forgetting the name of it. We worked with them to get free passes based on the fact that we're a Title I school. So we were able to get that. We got the buses. We got tickets to go out to Alcatraz. It was a fun field trip, but it was still that learning aspect of it. And, like a lot of these times, like I said, we chose to go big because a lot of times these kids haven't left their like 1 by 1 square mile community. And so, I don't know, every time I've taken kids to San Francisco, it's amazing because they're just like amazed by like the hills and Fairfield and Vacaville and Vallejo, and then crossing the first bridge, like, oh, is this the Golden Gate Bridge? Like, no, not yet, not yet. So like for me, it's just like someone who goes to the Bay Area on a regular basis, I kind of forget like not everyone has that accessibility. So taking those kids out there, to have this experience and then still make it fun and educational for them was great. And like, the kids kept talking about it even in like the first few months of the school year began. And so that was kind of great to like, oh, cool, great, we're gonna do this again next year. And then for the summer, we're gonna look around more areas in Sacramento, like some of the museums that we have. Like I know SMUD just put out a museum that was opened recently. There's like Safetyville for the little ones. So there's other opportunities in SAC that we're going to explore to try and get kids out to do more field trips. Maybe it might be weekly or maybe like every other week. But yeah, we want to do more field trips because again, and after school, you only have that 3 to 4 hour window, which you can't always take groups to and come back in a timely manner. So summer is a great time to plan and implement the field trips for the kids. And, again, using that as like that marketing tool to bring the kids into the program.
The only thing I would add, this is Jessica, is I think Rina touched on this. California state parks, there's like a lot of subsidies to help bring kids out. And then there's Parks and Rec too. And so I think especially like in rural communities, we see a lot of partnerships with Parks and Rec and pools. And my favorite activity is swimming. And so, to the extent that's really fun. And lastly, I would just say they both touched on this, but we were having a huge challenge with transportation. So field trips were actually not the biggest barrier. We were saying the last few years, it was staffing for transportation and coordinating that. So I don't think we need to get into that, but that was often the biggest barrier once ELO-P came was the busing and having enough staff for buses.
Absolutely. I'm hearing the importance of considering transportation and timing with planning field trips. So thank you for the question. We're going to wrap up with our final question from the chat and then transition to our closing. So to finish, are enrichment programs paid for by ELO-P funds, or do the students have an added fee to participate? Are there volunteers that help run them?
I know prior to ELO-P, we had a small fee to participate, but we would waive that fee for anyone that needed to so that they can participate. But there was a small fee because we were opening it up to all Hayward schools, and not all Hayward schools had the funding, right, for summer in our particular situation. But we did apply for ESSER funds, ESSER 3 funds, and with ELO-P, we are now offering our summer programs at no cost for all students.
Yeah, so similar to Rina, all of our programs are paid for through the ELO-P grant. Like I said, we had 3 licensed childcare programs that were on 3 of our school sites with the ELO-P funds, and last year's summer program, we basically took away the fees for all the families. And then even now it carries over to the after-school program. Those same sites that were private fee-based are no longer having those fees. So they've seen their enrollment jump from 40 kids to 160 kids during the school year as well. So we use the ELO-P funds to, fund the sites, and then we will go out and look for supplemental providers to bring onto the campus, at no cost to the families. And then if kids want to pursue their theater careers, because we had it as a theater option, then then the families have the opportunity to do that on their own. But we at least give them that first exposure on the school day. So anything that we bring into the school is paid first all through the grants. So it's again no cost to families again, which I think is making a bigger attraction to the families to our programs this year.
And I would just add, yeah, I think in our findings the last few years, the amount of enrichment has like exploded because of ELO-P, and field trips are just one mechanism, like one piece of that. So it's really made a difference in like the level of quality. And then on the fees, I would say, I mean, what we've seen also in some districts is just more integration and less segregation between kids. When you make some of these reductions, it's not kids that can pay and kids that can't pay. So that's something that we've seen different districts approach different ways, but definitely reduce fees. I do think the reduction in the federal stimulus could impact some districts and how they plan forward. But that you know, that's running out at the end of the year, or the 2024 September. So we'll kind of see what the impact is of that. And I don't know about Ryan and Rina, but I would say with volunteers, we don't see them staff programs ever because of just the rules and requirements, but they will come in often for kind of like when you bring the field trips to the school. That's kind of when we see some volunteers. It's often kind of cultural ambassadors and other folks that aren't there on a regular basis. Yeah.
For field trips, that's what we do. Jessica, I know you had mentioned earlier, like sometimes it's hard to staff. So our district has a policy anyways, in general, like if parents want to volunteer or anybody wants to volunteer, they have to go through a volunteer and fingerprinting process. So we take advantage of that to ask like, who has a badge, who can offer, and then that's how we meet our ratios so that we can go on the field trips. And then not so much from the expanded learning, but from the district perspective, right, in liability.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you for engaging and asking questions. I see there is a question about sharing the slide deck, and we will be sharing that and the recording with you all in a follow-up email. We're going to do that in our closing. So Chris, if we could share our last slide. All right. Thank you all for attending the launch of this year's Summer Game Plan series. Since you've participated in our session, you will receive a follow-up email, and we'll include a recap that includes resources for a successful summer learning implementation. I'd like to thank all of our panelists and speakers for your insights and experience in summer learning. I got excited, so I'm hoping that our entire audience is excited to implement some new strategies and connect further. We'll also be sharing a link to a survey for you to share feedback with us about your experience today. It'll take about 2 minutes to complete the survey. We'll also be sending a follow-up email through Zoom where you'll have access to the survey once again, or you can complete it now. And moving forward in our series, we have a few sessions coming up in March and April. 14th, we have Summer Synergy, Strengthen Ties with Enrichment Organizations and Community Partners. On March 21st, we have Bright Beginnings, Enriching Summers for Early Learners. And April 25th, we'll have a session dedicated to recruitment and retention, as well as professional development for staff. We'd like to highlight a few additional resources and events from our partners as we continue to build community and access resources. The California After School and Summer Challenge is coming up. This is an opportunity to advocate and share your story about why expanded learning is important. The NSLA, or National Summer Learning Association's free and virtual summer planning bootcamp is coming up. Our own Jessica will be sharing alongside amazing national champions. We also have the Sperling Center for Research and Innovation, or SCRI, Enrichment Toolkit series. This will provide a deep dive into the new toolkit and how to leverage enrichment partnerships, which came up in some of our questions. And the CAN ELO-P convening. So the California After School Network, in partnership with the California Department of Education, Expanded Learning Division, is offering this virtual 4-day academy designed to support California educators with the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. So I also know some questions around the logistical pieces of the ELO-P came up. So that'd be a great opportunity to get some further information in that area. Again, I'd like to thank you all for joining. Take a look at the chat for the link to the survey. And a shout out to our PCY colleagues, Chris and Alea, that have provided some logistical support as well. I hope you enjoyed the session.